A studio executive sits in a conference room in 2019 watching test audiences scroll through their phones during a $200 million blockbuster's preview screening. Not just during the slow parts, during the action sequences. The movie will flop. But here's what nobody understood yet. Those audiences weren't bored. Their brains had been rewired. In 2023, the average movie theater lost 34% of its pre-pandemic audience. Studios slashed budgets. Legendary directors complained about attention spans. Everyone blamed streaming, but they were looking at the wrong culprit. The real revolution wasn't happening on Netflix, it was happening in 60-second bursts on TikTok, and it was rewriting the fundamental economics of storytelling itself. This isn't just about short videos replacing long ones, it's about a complete inversion of how stories generate value, how attention becomes currency, and how an entire industry built on scarcity suddenly faced infinite abundance. The financial implications are staggering. We're watching a $100 million industry restructure in real time, and most people haven't noticed the mechanics of what's actually happening. Let me take you back to understand what we're losing. In 2005, if you wanted to watch a movie, you had exactly 3 options. Pay $12 at a theater, wait 6 months and pay $4 to rent it, or wait a year and catch it on cable for free with your subscription. This scarcity created a forced value proposition. Studios could invest $150 million in a film because they controlled a bottleneck. Your attention had nowhere else to go. The math was simple but powerful. A studio would spend $200 million total, $100 million on production, $100 million on marketing. If they could get 50 million people worldwide to pay an average of $10 each, that's $500 million in revenue. Add in home video, international sales, and licensing, and you're looking at $800 million. Split with theaters and distributors, the studio still walks away with $300 to $400 million profit. This model funded everything from Citizen Kane to The Godfather to Inception. But here's what made it work economically: the commitment cost. When you paid $12 and drove to a theater, you were invested. Psychologically, you'd already spent resources, money, time, social coordination. The sunk cost fallacy worked in cinema's favor. You'd sit through a slow middle act because you'd already committed. This gave filmmakers permission to build slowly, to develop character, to trust the audience would stay for the payoff in Act 3. The entire financial structure of cinema rested on this forced patience. You couldn't skip ahead. You couldn't check your phone without social shame. You were trapped, productively trapped, in a director's vision for 90 to 180 minutes. And because everyone knew you were trapped, they could charge premium prices for that trapped time.
ByteDance didn't set out to destroy cinema. They set out to solve a different problem. How do you keep people on an app longer than any app in history? Their solution, the TikTok algorithm, accidentally created the most powerful attention capture mechanism ever devised. And it did something that cinema never could. It learned what you wanted faster than you knew yourself. Here's the financial innovation that broke everything. TikTok reduced the cost of experimentation to 0. In the old model, if you wanted to test whether audiences liked a certain type of story, you'd need to invest $50 to $100 million to produce and market it. If it failed, you lost everything. This made studios incredibly risk-averse. They'd rather make Avengers 17 than gamble on something new. TikTok flipped this entirely. A creator could test 50 different story concepts in a week, spending nothing but time. The algorithm would instantly tell them what worked, not through focus groups or executive intuition, but through raw engagement data from millions of people. The successful video gets pushed to more viewers. The failures disappear without consequence. It's natural selection for content, operating at a speed cinema never imagined. By 2024, TikTok users were spending an average of 95 minutes per day on the app. That's more than the length of most movies. But here's the staggering part. In those 95 minutes, they'd watch 100 to 150 different pieces of content. Each one was chosen by an algorithm that had analyzed billions of micro-decisions to predict exactly what would keep them watching just a few more seconds. The economics are brutal for traditional media. A Hollywood studio spends $300,000 per minute of final film content when you factor in all costs. TikTok creators produce content for essentially zero marginal cost. A studio needs months or years to test whether a concept works. TikTok tests it in hours. Hollywood relies on stars and brands to reduce risk. TikTok proved that the algorithm itself is the star. It can make anyone famous overnight if the content hits the formula. The neurological hijacking. But we need to go deeper into why this works so devastatingly well. This isn't just about convenience or cost, it's about how TikTok's design exploits fundamental aspects of human neurology in ways that traditional cinema never could or never would. Your brain's dopamine system evolved to reward discovery. When early humans found a bush with berries, they got a dopamine hit. But here's the key. The biggest dopamine release came not from eating the berries, but from the moment of finding them, the surprise, the novelty, the unexpected reward. This is called the dopamine prediction error, and it's the basis of all learning and motivation. Cinema gives you dopamine, but in controlled, predictable doses. You know roughly when the action sequence is coming. You can feel the plot building to a climax. The three-act structure that Hollywood has used for a century works, but it's predictable. Your brain acclimates. The dopamine response decreases.
TikTok weaponized unpredictability. Every swipe is a new berry bush. Maybe it's the best thing you've ever seen. Maybe it's nothing. But the variance is enormous, and that variance is addictive. The algorithm is specifically tuned to maximize something called regret minimization. You keep swiping because what if the next one is amazing and you miss it? This is the same mechanism that makes slot machines addictive, but TikTok made it infinitely cheaper to pull the lever. Here's where it gets financially relevant. This constant dopamine stimulation raises the baseline. After 6 months of TikTok usage, users' brains physically adapt to expect that level of stimulation. When they sit down to watch a traditional movie, even a good one, their dopamine system is underwhelmed. The film isn't boring. Their brain has been recalibrated to need more frequent hits. A 2023 study from Stanford tracked eye movement and attention patterns in heavy TikTok users watching traditional films. The results were shocking. Attention fully disengaged during any sequence longer than 90 seconds without a significant change in stimulation, even during action sequences. The viewers weren't consciously bored. Their unconscious attention system had been reprogrammed. For the film industry, this is an existential crisis. You can't make a coherent 120-minute narrative if your audience's brain checks out every 90 seconds. The economics don't work if you have to deliver a dopamine hit every minute and a half for 2 hours straight. The production costs would be unsustainable. Let's put numbers to this collapse. In 2019, the global box office was $42.5 billion. In 2023, it recovered to only $34 billion, still 20% below pre-pandemic levels. But that number hides a more disturbing trend. The revenue is increasingly concentrated in fewer films.
In 2023, the top 10 movies generated 35% of all box office revenue. In 2010, that number was 22%. This concentration means the middle is collapsing. Studios used to make 20 to 30 films per year across different budget levels. Now they make 10 to 15, betting everything on proven franchises. Original mid-budget films, the $30 to $50 million dramas, thrillers, and comedies that were cinema's bread and butter, have nearly vanished. Why? Because TikTok provides that variety for free, instantly, optimized to individual taste. Consider what happened to romantic comedies, once a reliable profit center. In 2005, studios released 25 rom-coms theatrically in the US. In 2023, they released 3. Not because people stopped liking romance or comedy, but because TikTok offers thousands of romance narratives and comedy sketches daily, each one algorithmically selected to match your specific sense of humor and relationship status. Why pay $15 to see a generic theater rom-com when you can get personalized romantic comedy content for free all day? The financing model is breaking too. Traditionally, studios would pre-sell international distribution rights to reduce risk. A Chinese distributor might pay $20 million for the rights to distribute a film before it's even made, helping finance production. But by 2024, international pre-sales had collapsed by 60% from 2019 levels. Why? Because audiences in different countries were all watching the same TikTok videos, creating a global monoculture that made regional distribution less valuable. Even the streaming response has failed to fix this. Netflix, Amazon, and Disney Plus thought they could compete by making content faster and cheaper. They've succeeded at faster and cheaper, but they're still thinking in terms of 45-minute episodes and 90-minute movies. Their content is more expensive per minute than TikTok's infinite feed, but less optimized to individual attention patterns. They're stuck in the middle, too expensive to be truly scalable, too formulaic to create cultural moments that break through the noise.
But here's where the story gets interesting, and where everyone writing cinema's obituary might be premature. While traditional studios hemorrhage money, something unexpected is happening in the creator economy. Individual creators are generating film-level revenues with budgets that would make a studio laugh. Mr. Beast is the case study everyone should understand. In 2023, his channel generated an estimated $82 million in revenue, more than the production budget of most studio films. But he's not making films. He's making 15-minute videos that cost $2 to $3 million each. The economics are staggering. His cost per minute of content is competitive with Hollywood, but his distribution is free, and his audience engagement is 10 to 50 times higher than traditional media. What Mr. Beast discovered, and what traditional studios haven't accepted, is that the unit of measurement changed. Hollywood still thinks in terms of films and episodes. The internet thinks in terms of content and moments. A 10-minute video that generates 100 million views is financially equivalent to a medium-budget film's theatrical release, but it costs 95% less to produce and reaches audience instantly. This is creating a parallel entertainment economy. In 2024, the top 50 YouTube creators collectively generated $2.1 billion in revenue, about 6% of the global box office, but with production costs that are 1% of Hollywood's spending. The return on investment is 50 to 100 times better. Traditional finance would tell you this is where capital should flow, and increasingly it is. Venture capital that once would have funded independent films is now funding creator studios and multi-channel networks. In 2024, creator-focused media companies raised $4.3 billion in venture funding, compared to $800 million for traditional film production companies.
The smart money recognizes that the economics have fundamentally shifted. But there's a cost to this transformation that doesn't show up in financial statements, and it might matter more than any of the numbers we've discussed. TikTok's algorithm optimizes for engagement, not quality, and those two things are not the same. Cinema, at its best, creates experiences that are challenging, uncomfortable, or complex. Schindler's List makes you sit with horror. 2001: A Space Odyssey forces you into confusion and contemplation. Requiem for a Dream traumatizes you on purpose. These films work because they hold you captive for 2 hours and don't let you escape into something easier. They're difficult, and their difficulty creates transformation. TikTok can never do this. The moment content becomes difficult or uncomfortable, you swipe. The algorithm learns you don't like difficulty and stops showing it to you. Over time, every user's feed becomes an echo chamber of easy dopamine, funny, surprising, validating, but never challenging. You can't make Schindler's List in 60-second chunks optimized for engagement. The economics don't support the art. This creates a cultural narrowing. A 2024 analysis of TikTok's most popular content found that 78% fell into just 6 categories: comedy skits, dance, lip sync, life hacks, satisfying videos, and reaction content. The platform is extraordinarily good at delivering these 6 things, but it's structurally incapable of supporting anything that doesn't generate immediate engagement. Complex narratives die in the algorithm. The long-term cost might be a generation that never develops the attention muscles needed to engage with difficult art. If your brain is trained from age 12 to expect dopamine hits every 30 seconds, what happens when you're 30 and encounter ideas that require sustained focus to understand? We're running an uncontrolled experiment on human cognition, and we won't know the results for decades. Some neuroscientists worry about what they call cognitive endurance, the ability to maintain focus on difficult tasks for extended periods. This skill is trainable, like physical endurance, but if you never train it, it atrophies. Cinema was one of the remaining cultural experiences that required cognitive endurance. Without it, where do people learn to focus on hard problems for hours at a time?
Hollywood knows it's dying, but every solution they've tried has failed because they don't understand what actually changed. They think TikTok is a competitor offering shorter content. But TikTok isn't competing on length. It's competing on algorithmic optimization, production cost, and psychological manipulation. Fighting that war with traditional weapons can't work. First, studios tried making films more like TikTok: faster cuts, more action, simpler plots. This failed spectacularly. Films like Bullet Train 2022 and Red Notice 2021 were designed to be high-pace and algorithmic-friendly, with something exciting every few minutes. They were financial disappointments. Why? Because if audiences want TikTok-style stimulation, they'll just use TikTok. A movie that tries to mimic TikTok is more expensive, less convenient, and worse at being TikTok than TikTok itself. Second, they tried prestige. If we can't compete on stimulation, we'll compete on quality and artistry. Films like The Fabelmans and Tar, genuine artistic achievements, were made with the assumption that serious audiences still existed. They bombed theatrically. Tar made $29 million worldwide on a $25 million budget. It was critically acclaimed and nearly lost money. The audience that once supported prestige cinema had been captured by algorithmically optimized content. Third, they tried IP maximalism. Make everything a franchise, sequel, or reboot because those are the only things that can break through the noise. This worked financially for a few years, but it's hitting diminishing returns.
In 2023, 4 major franchise films flopped: Indiana Jones 5, The Flash, Fast X, and The Marvels. Audiences are experiencing franchise fatigue because even recognized IP can't compete with personalized algorithmic content. Why watch another Marvel movie when you've seen 50 Marvel TikToks already this week? The fundamental problem is that Hollywood is trying to compete on TikTok's terms instead of understanding what they offer that TikTok cannot. And that brings us to what might actually save cinema, if the industry is smart enough to see it.
There's a reason people still go to concerts when they can listen to music at home. There's a reason people still attend live theater when they can watch plays on screen. There are experiences that cannot be algorithmically optimized without destroying what makes them valuable. Cinema's unique value isn't length or quality or even story. It's shared cultural experience. When Oppenheimer and Barbie both released on the same day in 2023, creating the Barbenheimer phenomenon, they generated a combined $2.4 billion at the box office. Not because they were better movies than what streaming offers, but because they became cultural moments. People went to theaters to participate in something bigger than entertainment. They were joining a conversation. TikTok cannot create this. By design, every user's experience is unique, personalized by the algorithm. You and your friend might both spend an hour on TikTok, but you'll see completely different content. There's no shared reference point, no cultural moment, no collective experience. The platform optimizes for individual engagement at the expense of collective meaning. This is cinema's survival path. Become event experiences rather than content consumption. Films need to be things you go to, not things you watch. The economics have to shift from competing with free, infinite content to providing experiences that cannot be replicated by an algorithm. Some films have already figured this out. Top Gun: Maverick wasn't just a movie. It was an experience built around practical effects, IMAX screens, and communal excitement that you couldn't get at home. It made $1.5 billion. Avatar: The Way of Water used visual spectacle that required theatrical presentation to appreciate. It made $2.3 billion. Both films understood they weren't competing with TikTok for attention. They were offering something TikTok structurally cannot provide. The financial model shifts too. Instead of trying to make 20 mid-budget films hoping some become hits, studios might make 5 event films per year, each designed as unmissable cultural experiences. The production and marketing budgets stay high, but the hit rate improves because you're not competing with free content. You're offering unreplicatable experiences. This means fewer films, higher budgets, and theatrical releases only for movies designed to be events. Everything else, the dramas, comedies, thrillers, moves to streaming or gets made by creators for platforms. It's a contraction of the theatrical industry, but not extinction. The economics work if you're selling experiences, not content. Step back from the financial analysis and consider what's actually happening. We're watching the end of a 100-year-old model where stories were scarce, expensive, and controlled by gatekeepers. We're entering a model where stories are infinite, free, and algorithmically personalized. This isn't good or bad, it's transformation. The financial implications ripple beyond entertainment. If TikTok can destroy cinema's economic model through algorithmic optimization and reduced production costs, what other industries are vulnerable? Education still operates on the cinema model: scarce, expensive, one size fits all. Publishing, news media, even corporate training. Any industry built on charging money for generic content delivered to passive audiences is at risk.
But the shift also creates opportunities. The creator economy is generating new forms of employment and entrepreneurship. In 2024, an estimated 50 million people worldwide earned money as digital creators, more than work in manufacturing in the United States. The barriers to entry for storytelling have collapsed. You don't need $100 million and studio approval to reach an audience anymore. You need a phone and something interesting to say.
The question for society is whether we're trading depth for breadth. TikTok democratized access to audiences, but it optimized for engagement over meaning. We have more stories than ever, but fewer that challenge us to grow. We have more creators than ever, but fewer with the resources to attempt ambitious, difficult projects. The economics favor quick hits over lasting impact. Perhaps both models will survive in parallel. TikTok for daily entertainment, algorithmic dopamine, and participatory culture. Cinema for occasional events, shared experiences, and narratives too complex for 60-second optimization. The financial resources will flow primarily to the former, but the cultural prestige might remain with the latter. What's certain is that we can't go back. The attention economy has been permanently restructured. A generation has been neurologically adapted to algorithmic content delivery. The scarcity model that funded 100 years of cinema is gone. What emerges next depends on whether the industry can find new forms of value that algorithms cannot replicate, or whether cinema becomes a niche art form, financially insignificant but culturally preserved, like opera or ballet. In 2026, we're at the inflection point. Global box office revenue is projected to continue declining at 3 to 5% per year as TikTok usage grows, but theatrical revenue from event films is growing. The middle is collapsing while the extremes expand. Mega-budget experiences on one side, zero-budget creator content on the other. Investment capital is making its bet. In the next 5 years, more money will flow into creator economy infrastructure than into traditional film production. We'll see consolidated creator studios with budgets rivaling small production companies, but with 10 times the output and 50 times the efficiency. Some of these creators will eventually make theatrical films, but they'll bring TikTok economics with them, faster, cheaper, more data-driven. The art form will transform. Attention spans won't recover, that ship has sailed. But new forms of storytelling will emerge that work within shorter attention windows while maintaining complexity. Interactive narratives, choose-your-own-adventure formats, episodic films released in chapters, experimental structures that acknowledge changed audience psychology while reaching for artistic ambition. What we're watching is painful for those who love traditional cinema, but transformation always looks like death from inside the old model. The film industry isn't ending, it's being absorbed into something larger and stranger. The economics are brutal, the cultural costs are real, but evolution is indifferent to our preferences. The death of cinema isn't happening because TikTok made better art. It's happening because TikTok solved a harder problem: how to keep 1 billion people engaged for 95 minutes a day, every single day, with content so precisely calibrated to individual psychology that stopping feels impossible. That's not artistry, it's engineering. And in the attention economy, engineering beats artistry every time. Until someone figures out how to engineer artistry. That's the future worth building toward. If you found this analysis valuable and want to understand more about how modern technology is reshaping traditional industries, subscribe to Paper Reality. Every video breaks down complex economic transformations that are happening right now, often in plain sight.
Hit that like button if this changed how you think about the future of entertainment, and drop a comment about what industry you think will be disrupted next. I read every single one, and your suggestions shape future videos. The financial revolutions happening today determine the world we'll live in tomorrow, and understanding them gives you an edge. See you in the next video, where we'll explore another hidden economic transformation.